yeah, yeah, really. So it's interesting that it's really, I think what it is it's just a cultural misunderstanding. They have a very hard time understanding the culture here, and I feel like I'm defending my culture because
Right.
I see myself. I mean, I identify myself as a Muslim American, and so Islam is my faith. It's my belief. It's my way of life. But culturally, I am kind of out of touch with the Arab or the Middle Eastern culture. I know about it, but for example, I prefer rock music and hip hop over that.
And that's how you grew up.
I like falafels, but I'd much rather have an In-N-Out burger.
Sure.
You know, so.
But here's the American problem: is that we think if they had an In-N-Out burger, then they would prefer it too. If they saw our religion, then they would prefer it too. That's the American problem, is that we actually believe that if we go to what we call a backward country, an underdeveloped country, we go to some African country, and we provide them with Americanisms and think that they are going to prefer it to something to a culture they've had for thousands of years. Why do we think we're better? It blows my mind.
Well, I would say, though, it's not necessarily the culture. The culture is different, and I think that we can... you can compare and contrast cultures, and I think that maybe you can say that the Middle Eastern or the Arab culture is so different than the American culture, or the Chinese culture, or the South American, or whatever it is.
Right.
But I see Islam as more, it's a religion, it's a faith, it's a way of life. You can be, I have friends that are, Arabs make up a very small percentage of Muslims in the world. There's South Asian Muslims, there are Asian Muslims. I have friends that are
and
white.
It's a very growing...
It's growing,
religion.
yeah. It's actually the fastest growing religion in the country, which says something.
It is.
A lot of Americans are converting to Islam.
I know. Isn't that strange? In this time, and in New York, I think it's the #1 growing.
In the country.
And also, I know France, has a huge Muslim population, and I think they said in 25 years it will be the premier religion.
I think it's the largest percentage of any Western country, or what's considered a Western country. It's something like 20%.
Okay, and basically based on the cab drivers that I've had in New York who are Muslim and they have the hygiene issues, they will work out in France very well because the French don't bathe, and so I think it's a good matching. I think it's a good pairing.
Right.
Okay.
I guess really
again another thing we think that you have to be Muslim to be a cab driver in New York City.
Yeah, which was addressed in our video "I Am Muslim," where he said I've never driven a cab. Yeah. But I just think that the cultural differences can be something that's discussed. But I don't see a conflict in being a Muslim American. In fact, I see being Muslim in America it's easier. This is just my own personal opinion. And a lot of Muslims will disagree with me on this. But I see as being a Muslim in America is better for me, for my Islam, for my faith, for my religion, than being a Muslim in any other country. Because as a Muslim, there are certain things that I want to be able to say and certain things that I want to be able to do. And believe it or not, if I pray too much in certain Muslim countries, I'll get thrown in jail. If they see me going to the mosque too much, they say, okay, this guy's a religious fanatic, let's toss him in jail. Over here, I can pull out a prayer rug in the middle of downtown LA and pray, and I might get some funny looks.
Right.
But I have the right to do that.
You might also get some change, and maybe someone will give you a beer.
That's probably true. The I'm a Muslim video, I would have never been able to do in another country, in a lot of Muslim countries. That is true.
It's a great country we have.
It is, and I love this country. This is my country. I consider it my country. And so I don't see a conflict in being a Muslim American. I just see it as taking... I heard one of my imams, which is kind of like a priest, actually had a very beautiful analogy. He said, Islam is like water. What's water? It's H2O. So if you put water in a cup, it's going to take the form and the shape of that cup. If you put it in a square container, it's going to become square. But the components, the H2O, is exactly the same. So Islam in the Middle East is taking the Arab Middle Eastern culture, but it's still Islam. Okay. If you take it in America, it's just taking an American culture. It's taking an American shape, but it's still Islam. Right. So I don't, and in fact, like I said before, I see it as, for me, it's actually better to be here for my faith as a Muslim. I much more prefer here. I love my faith and my religion, but I love my country as well.
Exactly. Yeah. And they can both work together.
Absolutely.
But the irony, of course, is that the Americans, which is supposed to be the land of the free and equality and the melting pot,
salad bowl.
Yeah.
More, yeah.
And there is a fear, and it's a fear. It all comes from fear. Anything we don't understand is it comes into fear, and we have experienced violence and seen it and witnessed it. And I'll tell whether the people that are in the Mormon thing that just happened, or the Waco people, or whatever. Whenever the fundamentalists, actually I've had trouble with that word. I've been accused of misusing that word because I perceive fundamentalism typically as something that's kind of gone too far and kind of wacko. When actually fundamentalism to people who consider themselves fundamentalists who aren't crazy, perceive them as people who believe in fundamentals, in literal Bible.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I do think that the word has come to mean crazy whack jobs.
Yeah. Yeah. I do know a lot of Muslims who are very conservative. I would consider them a bit fundamentalist. They take literal interpretations from the Quran, and they're very peaceful people. I disagree with them a lot on their interpretations of the Quran.
Which you're allowed to do in this country.
Absolutely. But they're not violent. They pose no threat. They pose no danger. I just think that they have a misunderstanding of how to interpret our religion. That's all.
Let me ask you then, and I know this is completely opinion, but surely it's discussed among when you're at your mosque, or what is it of those what we'll call the fundamentalists, of that faction of people who are strapping bombs to their bodies and blowing up people?
Right.
What is creating this? What is creating this idea that the enemy must die?
Here in the States, I can honestly say that I don't know anybody like that. I've never met
I'm not saying you
like
know
that.
a terrorist. I'm saying
Right.
surely you've discussed what is the inspiration for this kind of action.
The people who do those things, or who are willing to do those things, are living in countries that are under a very violent oppression, and they almost see it as their only way out. So you have people, for example, in Iraq. You have people in Palestine. You have people in I haven't heard of it so much in Afghanistan, but I know it has happened, where they're living in societies where they feel like, look, my chances of living past 30 are slim to none anyways. I'm going to die anyways. I've probably had some of my brothers and sisters and cousins and friends killed anyways in airstrikes or by tanks. I've probably had my house bulldozed. I've probably had, all of these horrible, terrible things happen to me.
Someone must be to blame, too.
Somebody needs to be to blame, and if I'm going out, I'm taking some people with me. Now, I'm not supporting that idea. Nor am I justifying it. I'm just saying that this is sort of the mentality.
It's the human quotient. We must blame someone, and to feel like we have some power and control, then we have to take action. Otherwise, I'm a victim.
Exactly. Yeah. And who wants to be a victim? You want to sort of take action. Here, I can take action if I feel that people are discriminating against me, who are prejudging Muslims, who are being violent or racist or prejudiced. Towards Muslims. I can get together with a group of friends, make a video called "I'm a Muslim" and post it on YouTube, and that's my outlet. And 2.5 million people will see it, and it'll become in the top 10 most commented videos on YouTube. And now I've released that. I can become a filmmaker. I can become a musician.
You can say something.
I can become a
politician.
politician.
You have other choices than strapping yourself.
Exactly.
Right.
And
also, if the the perception of Americans is rich, cocky, arrogant, immodest, sexual, gun-toting, greedy people,
which a lot of people
believe
have that misconception. Yeah.
And you know what? I'm going to get banged for this, but there's a lot of reason for them to believe that we are cocky and we are arrogant and we do think we know more and we do think we're better. And we think our God is better and we think our food is better and we think a lot of our things are better. It's a young mentality. It's a young country mentality. A pompous little scrapper mentality that came up and did really well. And that kind of attitude will be the demise of our country. If it continues, we need to be humbled. I do not want us to be humbled, however, by people who perceive us as the enemy of all good things. It's the enemy of good morals, of the enemy of good standing. The things that we are worried about, and when we look at Islam, we look at Arabs, are the very things that they are concerned about us.
Yeah.
They think of us as reactionary. We think of them as reactionary.
Absolutely.
And, why can't we all just get along? We're all the same.
If it were only so that simple, I wish it was. And I really think a lot of the violence just comes from people not having an outlet to vent their frustration, where over here we do. If I was living in Palestine and I felt like I was oppressed, I can't make an I'm a Muslim video and put it on YouTube. No. I can't. I mean, I can't do so many of those things, and I feel like that's where a lot of that.
A lot of the countries, Western countries, are having an increase in Muslim population because they are able to celebrate their faith and still live in a free country.
Absolutely.
You know what bothers me about the news? Once the story is established, you never get the beginning again. And over the last however many years, we hear so much about Sunni and Shiite. And they just assume everybody knows the difference. I don't know the difference.
Depending on who, this is one of those things where if you ask me, I'm going to give you one answer. If you ask a different Muslim, they're going to give you a different answer.
Okay.
So it's
Maybe I should just make something up.
I see it, and a lot of people see it. It's just not just my opinion, but it's a very a lot of people hold this opinion that it's more of a political split.
Okay.
It's not so much
They're same religious.
Same
beliefs.
religion. We both both Sunnis and Shiites both believe Allah as God, meaning God, as our Lord and our Creator. We both believe in Muhammad as the Prophet. We both believe in the Quran as a holy book. Where the split comes is after the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, passed away, is who should take control, who should take leadership. And nowadays there is a lot more differences, but it really is much more of a political split. It really doesn't have anything to do with
do you know what this makes me so crazy about? It's the same in all religions and all things. It's like Christians. There's the Catholics and the Baptists or whatever, and they actually oppose each other, and yet they have to believe the same things.
Mm-hmm.
And it always makes me crazy that a religious belief, a faith that is about peace and equality and inclusion, comes down to who's supposed to be in charge.
Yep.
It's every single. See, you know what? We're all not different. We're all exactly the same. You can call it Sunni, Shiite, Jew, Catholic, Baptist, whatever, Orthodox. It's all the same. We're all desperate for control.
Right.
We all want to be better than everybody else, and yet we preach. Our higher self knows to preach to be all. We are all equal. We all are brothers. We are all of the same thing. Our blood bleeds the same, and yet we still want to be a little bit better than, a little bit different, a little bit separatist. We're no different. In fact, the interesting thing that I'm learning about this conversation is in trying to find the misconceptions and the things that I can understand the differences. The way that we are alike is that we are that as Americans and Westerners and Christians, primarily Christians, we are no better in our separateness, in our judgment, and so perhaps that should give us some compassion. And understanding that someone who has been oppressed, who has had their house bulldozed over, who has lost their siblings at the ages of 9 or 10, who were taught to carry a gun at those ages, we need to feel in control. We need to feel like we have choices.
Absolutely.
And so since we are creatures of free will, sometimes we make bad choices.
Absolutely.
Especially when our society helps us make those bad choices.
Absolutely.
You are really, really terrific, and your
thanks.
videos and your work are wonderful, and I think you're doing great work.
Thank you
And
very
I've
much.
learned a lot today.
Actually, I did as well.
Did you?
I did. Just
You
a lot
learned
of times
that salami
I
was
learned-
peaceful.
Salami's
meat.
peaceful meat.
That's what I bring to the table. Will you say goodbye to the vlog people?
Goodbye,
Vlog
everybody.
people. Thank you so much.